What's going on, everybody? What happened? We just ended that music a little bit early. Okay, am I on? Is this thing on? Oh, shit. Was that me? I was trying to do something on my calendar and I fucked that up. Welcome, everybody, once again to another edition of the Bitchuation Room podcast here in your ears, in your eyeballs. I hope you guys are good on this Sunday evening, as we just warm ourselves and the ashes of our democracy. Yeah, they're just, they're good. You can barbecue stuff over those coals. Ideally, the rich is what I hope we do. But good to have you here. If you're here on YouTube, obviously click that like button and share the stream right now. If you're on Twitch, sup. If you're listening as a podcast, you know, take a moment right now and write this podcast a 5-star review. Just palm the keyboard with nice things. We have such a good show today. Public health researcher and writer Abdullah Shihipar is here. He's going to talk all about his latest piece for Teen Vogue, in which he calls out the Biden administration's handling of COVID. As I think a lot of us have been doing lately, but especially given what's happened in the Supreme Court this week, I'm eager to get his thoughts on where to from here. But to lighten the mood, we have Julie Goldman and Brandy Howard of Dumb Gay Politics podcast, and I am relying on them because it is a dark. I've been feeling a little down this week. I just like the brighter my lipstick is, the sadder my soul is. So that's how that works. But anyway, I'm very much looking forward to getting them in the stream and hanging out. But before we do that, I do have a couple announcements to make. Number one, I'm sure you heard, if you listened to the show last week, if you've followed me on any of the things, that we will be live. And by we, I mean me and MacLeod and Sam Cedar will be live in Brooklyn March 10th, which is a Thursday at 7 p.m. Not only the three of us, but we're going to be joined by Progressive Council member of New York, Tiffany Caban, who again is one of the squad of the New York City's council. And that's very exciting. I'm super excited to have her on and pick her brain about New York politics. And I hope you guys can make it there. Again, we're going to be vaxxed. We're going to be masked. There will be VIP tickets. There are VIP tickets, which is basically like you get a poster and you get to hang with me for like an hour cocktail situation, because I find it hard. I want to like sit down and hang with people. And I was like, all right, let's just do that. Let's, pay a little extra and, we'll hang. And by the way, all the money supports this podcast, which is once again 100% independent. It is ad free at the moment. And you are supporting independent left comedy and politics and analysis and my hashtag career choices. Also, if you are a patron of the show, which is what you do if you really want to support this show, is you become a patron, patreon.com/bitchuation room, you are going to get not only 25%, 20% off our merchandise, 20%. Wow. But you're going to get a free ticket to the virtual show of the Bitchuation Room on March 10th. We have virtual tickets available for $10. You're going to get that free. You get that link so you can watch live if you can't be there in Brooklyn that night. But if you can, I am going to give you guys a code to get $10 off your tickets. So it is a huge perk. It definitely behooves you to become a patron. Why else? Because you get 10 to 15 to sometimes like 30 minutes of bonus content every single week. We always have a bonus bish. We have a bonus story. Today, this week, we're going to talk about cannabis stopping COVID. The stoners are like, see, I told you, bro. Yeah, which, little stoner in me, the little 16-year-old who killed so many brain cells is like, hell yeah. Anyway, so stick around for that and become a patron. $5, $10 gets you a shout out. $20 gets you a free piece of merch every 3 months. I'm going to continue with this and say that we do AMAs every month, but I've stopped doing them for a while, but I'm going to be back on. So Tuesday, the 25th of January, let's do an AMA. Send me your guys' questions. Send me them to my inbox. Send me them to bitchuation@gmail.com, which is where you can send all of your questions, concerns, grievances, etc., but also your questions for that AMA. I always have a lot of fun answering them. You guys are great. The patrons, once again, the sexiest people on the planet, next to the people who aren't patrons but listen to the show. So cool. We got a lot to get to. The 49ers won. I don't even like football, but I fucking stand the 49ers. So hell yeah, let's get to it, you guys. As always, we start out every show with asking, what are you bitching about now? So this is a little bit of a bitch and a little bit of a celebration, but I am both bitching about the way that Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy is bastardized by the right and liberals combined. I'm sure we've all seen the anti-maskers wearing MLK Jr. shirts and being like, is it my time? Am I oppressed now? You know, like that. They're so excited. They think they're oppressed when we're actually doing everything to prevent them from dying. And obviously that's ridiculous. And we're going to get to that a little bit later when a certain new governor has used MLK Jr.'s name in vain and his legacy in vain. But I'm also mad at liberals because liberals all the time love to talk about MLK Jr. Oh, just the heroism, amazing. Let's build statues. Let's make, museums. And yet, we can't even get basic voting rights enshrined and protected after, by the way, the entire Voting Rights Act was gutted. Remember that whole thing? Yeah, like the thing that MLK Jr. and the civil rights movement fought for, that just completely hollowed out. It's basically, it's mostly tumbleweed at this point in time. So I'm bitching about that. And I'm also bitching about the way that liberals misunderstand how radical MLK Jr. was. He really was. A year before his death, he fully called out. He was like really big on canceling the Vietnam War, but he really did. He was openly adamant that the Vietnam War was wrong. It was amoral, and also that things like capitalism were also immoral. So he called out capitalist exploitation, the ways, warmongering, and the U.S. empire said those words, specifically U.S. empire, and also kind of stuck it deliberately to liberals themselves who conveniently forget, and moderates, right? Conveniently forget all the times that he was like, you guys are the ones who are kind of fucking me here. So this was from his letter from Birmingham jail, which obviously a very famous letter, where he writes, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the KKK, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of attention to positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to, quote, wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than the absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. That is from his 1963 letter from Birmingham jail. There you have it. I think we got a few lukewarmies in Congress these days who are going to be talking a big game when it comes to MLK's birthday and this week and what it means. But I want to follow that up with this concept of time. I think Stanford University put this out and created this really nice graphic about, again, kind of the ways that in these moments, in these pivotal moments, we sort of believe that, like, things get better generally. Maybe. Progress. And they don't actually. So here he is talking about that concept of time.
I think that is an answer to that myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme righteous in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals, and without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
We must help time. I really, 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 really like that. And look, we're in a moment where the right has absolutely, as MLK just said, they've made very good use of their time. It's very easy when your goal is just fascist corporate authoritarianism. Like it's tight. You're just like, oh, hell yeah, I know exactly how to do that. Forging some sort of, multiracial, anti-racist democracy is different. And it does take a lot of work. And we have to continue that work. I hear whispers that Biden may run some executive orders when it comes to the criminal justice system. I sure as shit hope so, because we have not seen his ability to convince those lukewarm centrists who may or may not be himself. I would argue that he also is one of those sort of comfortable moderates who tells people to wait, right? That's what he ran on. We'll see. Let's hope he takes some of these lessons to heart. And with that, I want to welcome for the hour my two guests. They are the hosts of the podcast Dumb Gay Politics. Please welcome Julie Goldman and Brandy Howard.
You're welcome.
You get the stand-up intro on this show.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to be with you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you for being here, you guys. Obviously you saw what I was sort of bitching about, celebrating, but I have to ask every guest when they come on, what are you bitching about? What's going on? It's second week of the new year. What's crawled up your ass and died?
Well, that's a different conversation. But...
And by the way, quite a few things. Quite a few things. I mean, we haven't
Let's not judge what each to its own.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, we're nonstop bitching about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, but we're going to wait for that. That's really our thing that's bugging. But what you did was brilliant. Honestly, we're going to have to steal that for our podcast. That quote was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, we talk about it all the time.
I wrote it. Yeah. I wrote it myself.
Yeah, you did.
You were his speechwriter.
And we're going to credit you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I think what we're sort of bitching at, to piggyback on that, is the white not paying attentioner, which many of them are moderates. We have too many people that, and whether they're the liberal or the moderate or whatever they think they aren't paying attention. And and I am here. We used to be on a show on Bravo. We watch a lot of reality TV. And I feel like Andy Cohen, I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he needs to pick up the slack. And he needs to start having liberal and Democrat politicians on his show, all of the talk show hosts on every major network. They talk about politics. They don't shy away. And he is super liberal. He's super active in politics, but he doesn't bring it on that show. And he has a show, Watch What Happens Live. And then he has a channel on Sirius. And I think he needs to start raising awareness about our candidates, our Congress members, all these people in QAnon, they know who their Congress representatives are. They know every single person that's being primaried and running on the Republican Party.
Right.
We were at a fundraiser the other 2 nights ago for the hottest guy in Congress, Eric Swalwell. I mean, that's just our opinion, but
I don't know. I put John Ossoff above him, but
that's right. We'll say in the House.
Got it. Yes.
And there's people there who were giving money, and they were liberals, and they were great, but like they didn't even know who he was. And it's like we can't if you can't pay attention to the hottest guy in Congress and in the House.
Exactly. He's trying so hard. I mean, Swalwell really is what we call him. No, I think I love the idea that I think a lot of people are like, no, like separation of church and state, separation of entertainment and politics. There's people drive a very hard line. And what we do is trying to break that down. But like, and kind of like, we're at a moment where I think you can't ignore it anymore. And you don't have to come down on one side. Just have politicians on a little bit.
You
more,
do.
Right?
I think that you do. I think
you do?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I'm all for go to your family dinner, go to your, I don't care. The three things you shouldn't talk about at dinner are religion, politics, and money. And I'm like, those are the only 3 things, first of all, that you should be talking about. And the first thing we should be talking about is politics, and take a side and stand by it. Like hugely stand by your side. It's just like the quote that you aired. It's like, no more, we can't pussyfoot around. And if you are into Trump, or if you're into like not like rights and stuff, and that's your thing, then fine.
But we have a Patreon, and we don't do politics on our Patreon. And we have people that we love, of course, because anyone who gives us money, we obviously love them. Sure. But it's like they'll go, I just do your Patreon, and I don't do the regular one. So I don't want to hear about politics. It's just too stressful for me, and I don't know who anyone is. And Julie just said it best when she said, at this point, everybody needs to pick a side, and they need to know, because now we're dealing straight up with our rights again. Yeah. We could all be to sleep during Obama, but now we all need to wake back up. We needed to during Trump, and we need to stay awake because our rights are
We're
being
dealing
threatened.
with a group of people who would watch you die in a ditch.
Yes.
They would literally watch you die in a ditch.
Yeah.
So I want people to get angry and fight just like they fight.
No, you're right. I mean, I take it back on no Republican would actually go on Bravo. No. Yeah. But I think you're right. And like someone like Andy Cohen, who has he can totally dictate what he and who he interviews and what he says. Like he's like a cash cow for them. They love him. So I felt that way about Beyonce before. Like I used to I had a 180. I loved Destiny's Child. Then I really didn't like Beyonce because I was like, why aren't you using your platform to say fucking anything about what's going on? You were like untouchably, famous. And then she released, Lemonade. And I was like, fuck, and it was great. She's on top of a cop car drowning. And I was like, I take it back. You're God. No, obviously.
Yeah. But you're right. And then she did do it. Right. And it's like, I don't know. I really want him to, you got to get all of these people drowning in Housewives to pay attention. And I put ourselves in that. It's like, I didn't know anything. I would get a panic attack when we were on Bravo. And that was during Obama. I would be like, God forbid anyone stop me on a sketch show. And they're like, but I mean, like in where there's like a
where it's like the Tonight Show.
Yeah. Like who's the vice president? And then it's like, I'm like, I can't think of it right. I'm not
Van Buren.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people walking around and they don't know. I mean, and we had to relearn it all. I should say, learn it. Like we had to be like, how do bills get passed? Yeah. And how many people are in Congress? And how does that work? And you don't have to know that deeply of stuff, but we have to be paying attention as much as their Facebook army is paying attention.
Yeah. And we have to, I do also think that we need to be, it's not respect. That's not the word I'm thinking of, but I think that one of our fatal flaws is the continuation, the continuing undermining of not just the Republican Party, but of the QAnons and the cuckoos, and they're crazy and they're Trumpers, and it's just whatever. And where you don't have to, but we do. And we should be paying attention to Fox News, and we should be paying attention to what they're saying and what they're doing, because they're winning.
Yes.
In my opinion.
No, they fucking are. And like, I guess the last thing I'll say on this is you're right about, I think what's interesting, what's happening now is that under Obama, like especially with, you know, the passage of gay marriage and Oberfeld versus Hodges, and like some of the ways that we felt like, oh, okay, we're never going back from before that. Like we're getting, you know, we've got abortion rights enshrined, kind of. You know, Roe's probably not going anywhere. Like it felt like we were advancing, and I think now, it's very clear that like rights that folks felt like were already protected are definitely in the crosshairs.
Oh,
And that's good. I mean, I think we all know like the feminist movement has a class problem. And, you know, I think a lot of women who only focus on reproductive rights kind of move on after they thought that their rights were protected. And now they're not. And it's like, well, look, you know, for most people of color in this country, their rights in other ways have been stripped from them. And even with the right to have an abortion, like there's so many barriers even with that. So it's good. We're kind of all in the same muck now. So I'd say Andy Cohen, get the fuck here in our muck.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Reach that audience. Reach that audience.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to move on because we got a lot to get to. So much happened this week. And I conveniently closed down the window that I needed.
Oh my God.
No, we got a lot to get to. So this was the week where Prince Andrew was literally booted from the castle as the House of Windsor stripped him of royal titles in reaction to the sexual assault charges by a trafficked victim of Jeffrey Epstein. This means he'll now have to face the lawsuit as a private citizen and will now merely be referred to as Ewy Drewy. Not your Royal Highness, just Ewy Drewy. The Department of Justice brought sedition and conspiracy charges against 10 members of the Oath Keepers over their role in January 6th, including its leader, Stuart Rhodes, who is a Yale law graduate who, in advent of the day, spent $33,000 on weapons. But please tell me more about how Trump voters are working class. Russia is threatening to invade Ukraine again. And if NATO does not stop its eastward expansion, in order to calm tensions, Joe Biden is currently digging up dirt on himself to try and hand over to the Russians. He's really... 50 actors and directors have signed a statement in support of actress Emma Watson after she faced calls of anti-Semitism for making a Free Palestine Instagram post, including actors Gael Garcia Bernal, Viggo Mortensen, and Mark Ruffalo. I'm not sure if this is an open letter or my horny search history. And more than 8,000 Kroger's workers are on strike to demand better pay. And if you weren't sure that the class war was real, know that CEO Rodney McMullen made $22.4 million in 2022. Yes, we will eat the rich with Kroger's mayo. For everything else, this is the week where. Okay, so this is where private equity douche turned Republican governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, was sworn in just this weekend. And he immediately introduced 11 executive orders. First executive order, abolish critical race theory from schools. Second executive order, abolish masks from schools. That is, unless the mask covers your entire head and is white and is pointy on the top. In that case, the second executive order in order to enforce the first one. So Youngkin also discussed the need to eliminate critical race theory, which somehow he thinks exists in schools, using, once again, Martin Luther King's legacy. Take a look.
We're not going to teach our children to view everything through a lens of race. Yes, we will teach all history, the good and the bad, because we can't know where we're going unless we know where we have come from. But to actually teach our children that one group is advantaged and another is disadvantaged simply because of the color of their skin cuts across everything we know to be true. And the immortal words of Dr. Martin Luther King ring in our ears that we must judge one another by the content of our character and not the color of our skin. But this is what will be the founding principle of our executive order, what we're going to do in Virginia schools.
Wow. Wow. An educator. He must be. Yeah, no, we're going to teach history.
I love that Republicans think racism in America works like the movie A Quiet Place, you know, like if it doesn't hear you, you don't have to do equal pay, you know, like just shh, you know, like the actual problem is talking about it, because we all know that the number one cause of problems is talking about the problems.
Yeah, you can't. First of all, you can't talk about the problem because then there's a problem.
Yeah.
So we can't actually
Totally.
acknowledge the problem, and you know what I mean.
That's really
Also-
problematic of you to
Yeah.
raise. Julie.
Yes, I'm sorry. I mean, you're right. I would be problematic to raise that there would be a problem in order for us to talk about the problem. They also, just in general, I just want to say Glenn Youngkin just showed the perfect example of how Republicans and white male grievance people spin and twist the words of not just Martin Luther King Jr., but any like marginalized people or minority or an actual person who has had their rights stripped or not given at all. And they then put themselves in that, like, and they are masters at doing it. They really are. They're really good at it. He made it sound like we shouldn't, judge a person by the content of the or whatever, their skin and the content of the character. It's like, oh yeah, that relates to me. And I'm white. I'm like that, and people then believe that and follow it.
Yeah,
it's insane.
We knew that all those dick fucks were going to run on critical race theory. We've all known, and it's working like a charm. And really the sad thing for us was that Meghan McCain left The View because we could not wait for her to have to show up and answer for. Could not wait for her to talk about critical race theory. How is she going to get around being a rotted Republican with that going on? It is the most disgusting, divisive issue. And the fact that they're all running on it everywhere.
And they've made it an issue into things that you teach in school. It's not even a thing. It's not even, it was in law school. It was something literally created in a law environment. And now all of a sudden critical race theory is like, we're teaching our children that they're, and also, when did you ever care about your children?
Yeah, you hate your children.
About your children.
You want them to die. You want them to be hospitalized with COVID
Give me a break.
And kill your parents. No,
seriously.
Meghan McCain, first of all, would have definitely handled that fine. She would have just, just pull up the weird, like My Little Pony hairstyle, a little harder, a little tighter. She would probably do that. Meghan McCain would talk about how critical race theory is a problem in white cornrows. Like I had no doubt. Like she just in the same breath.
Yes. And that's why we love Meghan McCain.
Yes. I mean,
that's why we miss and love
honestly,
Meghan
I
McCain.
can't even watch The View now. I mean, that's really the two news of the week.
Glenn Youngkin should have gone on and been like, sorry, you can't watch The View anymore, everybody. I'm real sorry about it.
I do feel like the irony of all this is that with the critical race theory stuff is like, they all just kind of need critical race theory to solve their problem. Like if they only had a little bit more CRT, maybe they wouldn't be so afraid of CRT. Because the whole thing is the idea that like individual people are racist, and the right still don't get that, like, look, it's not that, someone is judging you by the color of their skin or by your skin. It's because you actually pay a judge to judge people. Like the judges in this country, the justices do that for you. It's structural, it's not individual. They think it's
right. And there do think there's a way. And if they wanted to make critical race theory like critical race theory law, critical race theory elementary school, I think there is truly a way to do it, to teach. It'd be the same thing as teaching boys not to rape. Like it's teaching your place, who you are, what your role has been in history and is now, how you can be seen, what is your responsibility. As a white person, these things have been burdened on you, even if you're a 5-year-old and you didn't mean for it to happen, whatever. It's still part of the structure.
Right.
So how are we going to work differently? You're not trying to be better or less than anyone else, but let's start seeing each other within the structure of which we've been created.
Yeah. Did you guys see there are now student groups popping up of like banned book clubs where they're like getting together to read all the books that the parents at their schools are banning because they like center a like gay and or black person, and they're just like, get it out of here. But
we live in Burbank, and I just read that they're doing it in Burbank.
They're
getting the banned books. We didn't even know they banned any books in Burbank. I'm horrified that they called. I'm like, what? Why are we doing that in Burbank?
I mean, banning books.
Yeah.
What year? Where are we?
Where are we?
Banning books.
Where
And
the fuck
I
are
thought they haven't. We have a listener who lives in Ohio, and she's a little girl, and they have been having all of these school board nightmares in Ohio, and and they're all getting super violent and
we?
everything.
Yeah.
She said they don't teach critical race theory in any school, even like in Ohio, but they're all running on it. Like, they don't teach it anywhere. Like in
Well, it's the
schools.
same way that, like sort of statistically, the most MAGA counties who like were moved by the idea of building the wall are the farthest from the border and actually are the least diverse. So I remember the study, it's like, it's not a fear that you're actually living. It's not a reality you're living. It's a fear of maybe this will one day be my reality. Whereas when people have taco trucks on every corner, so to speak, like life is great and everything's actually cool. So it's all weird projection. Last, I want to ask you guys what you think. Terry McAuliffe, who lost to Glenn Youngkin, really tried to run this negative campaign against him, being like, Youngkin is a Trumper. He, blah, blah, blah. And Youngkin he is a Trumper. He just tried to distance himself from Trump. Do you feel like we learned lessons from that race? I know a lot of people were making a big deal, others were not, but do you feel like there was a lesson to be learned from that loss that like Democrats, for me, I'm like, did we double down on the anti-Trump shit without actually projecting a vision?
Well, I thought the problem was that he said specifically about critical race theory. He said the other dude, what was his name?
McAuliffe. Yeah.
I thought he said, we're not going to have parents coming in telling our teachers what they can teach. And I thought that was where everyone else, I mean, I didn't care. I mean, I just don't care. But everyone else was like, that's where it all fell apart.
Like, you're not going to tell me what I'm teaching my children.
I mean, even Democratic parents were like, yeah, no, that's exactly what I actually want to do.
Right. Well, that's what the parents are involved with, whatever.
Oh, God, the pandemic really ruined parents. I mean, with all due to all the parents out there. But it's like, they're up. That's what she said when she said, they don't care. You don't even care about your kids. It's like, since when are dads? I swear my dad was that, like, what grade are you in again? I mean,
And you're there with a gun on your hip at the PTA meeting or whatever, talking about, I'm here for my son.
Yeah, right. Like, exactly. Having them like throw masks into a bonfire.
Yeah. It's abuse. Wearing these masks. It's abuse. It's abusive. But to answer to your question, I do think it goes back to sort of what we had said at the beginning. Democrats have got to cut the shit. They have to start to listen and understand how to talk to this other side, which is owning us, And we aren't. We're pretending we're the ones with our head in the sand. We're the ones pretending that we're better than them. We're eating our own. We're talking shit within our own party and within liberalism because one person misgendered someone else or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is finding the way to talk to this side and to understand and learn the lesson that anti-Trump isn't enough. It doesn't matter.
Totally. Speaking of trash Democrats, this was the week where the centrist on centrist crime in the Democratic Party continued as Joe Biden finally publicly called for filibuster reform to pass voting rights. And then almost simultaneously, the Senate's mom from Mean Girls, Kyrsten Sinema, stood on the floor and gave an impassioned defense of said filibuster.
And I strongly support and will continue to vote for legislative responses to address these state laws, including the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that the Senate is currently considering. The debate over the Senate's 60-vote threshold shines a light on our broader challenges. There's no need for me to restate my long-standing support for the 60-vote threshold to pass legislation. And there's no need for me to restate its role protecting our country from wild reversals in federal policy. It is a view I've held during my years serving in both the U.S. House and the Senate, and it is the view I continue to hold.
Except that is bullshit, and we've all seen the clip of Kyrsten Sinema talking about how the filibuster needs to be done away with and used strategically in the ways that Mitch McConnell did. Don't you feel like you watch that and you're like, it's so performative? I feel like her corporate donors are like in the audience with an iPad going like, yes, baby, that's my girl.
Yes. Oh,
we're just so filled with hate. There's just so much hate in our heart for her. It's
we hate her course.
I mean, well, first of all, we already thought she was a thirst bucket to the stars.
Yes.
She's so thirsty and annoying
Yes.
from minute one, from
Yes.
jump, lurking with her stupid outfits and her stupid purse. And it's like, have some respect.
Yeah,
I mean, and then when she did the thumbs down,
that was it.
and,
That was it.
and bitch,
that
you're
was
gonna
it.
thumbs down raising the minimum wage. You can literally, I mean, we can't even say, we won't even do
Say
it. We won't even, I mean, we
I
probably
don't
would get
have any
arre-
sponsors.
We'd probably get arrested. I feel like what it is saying it is legal, but I do need her to get like dick slapped with like 1,000 dicks in a row.
Oh yeah, she needs to die in a pool of dicks for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, she's
Yeah.
bisexual.
But she would-
Like, Julie,
I love it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not only can we just like appreciate the fact that not only did she thumbs down the $15 minimum wage, but it was surrounded by tapping Mitch McConnell on the shoulder, a curtsy, and she
Yes.
was wearing a fucking mini backpack
Yes.
and like a little
Yeah.
like a little skirt that some weird vintage skirt, and I think maybe also a wig. Like there was so much happening.
that backpack filled with jizz. She looked so dumb when she did that curtsy. It was like just.
Oh, I mean,
We were, and that was. We didn't think it could get worse than that.
I wanted to call up the headquarters for LGBTQ and be like, you need to fucking fire this bitch.
Rescind it.
I cannot handle it. I cannot handle it. She is such a, I can't
But
even.
that
But
goes
don't you
back to the earlier bitching, which is
Mm,
that
mm.
this is what I think with people not. And I mean, I'm saying it literally with as someone who wasn't informed and who loved to just be like, oh, I'm in the middle and I just don't want to deal and I don't want to pay
Mm.
attention. And I feel
Mhm.
stupid because I don't know anything and I don't want to bother doing the research and no one's good looking on the news and blah, blah, blah. But so I understand those people. I do. I get it. It's stressful. It's easier to just watch reality TV. But the thing is that she lied and we believe she lied and said she was bisexual. She exploited that in Arizona. And I believe that we know a lot of people who moved to Arizona in the pandemic, like liberal,
Really?
like
we want more COVID. Like where?
yeah, it's less expensive.
It's less expensive.
Yes,
they got out
of
of
course.
California.
Because
and
they
then-
left California.
Yeah.
That's where.
Yeah, it's either Austin,
right.
if you're like
Yeah,
an
a lot of good
edgelord,
places, yeah.
Rogan lover,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess Arizona. No, Arizona's great. There's some amazing grassroots organizing that happens there too.
and they did get those people elected. They elected her,
You know,
and they feel lied to.
Yeah, they feel lied
And
to.
the other people that will show up, maybe, perhaps, probably not, because who goes to midterm elections anymore? But hopefully, if people do show up, they are informed, because if they're not, they're going to vote for her again. And no one wants her there.
They need to get her out. I mean, she fooled like my mother and my mother's lady friends who play bridge and wanted to make sure good Democrats got voted. My mother lives in Boston. Apparently, meanwhile, they're having bridge games with the ladies at the temple, sending money to Kirsten Sinema. And like,
yeah,
and now my mom literally is the first one who's going to run down there and be like, I have a bag of dicks and I'm dumping them on your stupid fucking head. Like,
so there is someone that people in Arizona are trying to encourage to run, which is Representative Ruben Gallegos. And here's what he had to say to, Sinema's entire sort of, dramatic defense of the filibuster and how important it is as a Senate rule, because it like protects minority rule. Let's be honest. Take a look.
So right now there is an existential threat to democracy, and this excuse that she's using that it may get worse is not true. It is worse. This is the dark times, and she needs to step up, help us pass the Voting Rights Act. You don't even have to get rid of the filibuster. Make the exception to the Voting Rights Act, much like you just made the exception to the filibuster 2 weeks ago to raise the debt limit.
Why Arizona?
exactly.
Yep.
And that's how you know she's a lying sack of shit.
Yeah, things are already bad. Don't you want to undo the bad stuff? Like, no, because I don't know.
Well, if we do, then in a year, and that's a lie too. Just the whole thing about then if we get rid of the filibuster, then this party will overtake that party, and we'll never. They're just Mitch McConnell would get rid of the presidency if he thought it would help the Republican Party. So it's utterly it's just having a person look you straight in the eye and lie to you that they're doing something that's good for you while they reach up inside you and pull out
your soul
vagina stuff. Yeah.
And I know
Yeah,
that there's like the Republicans, they are voting people out who just simply, and we're talking about representatives. I mean, Kirsten Sinema she's a senator. So that's even, easier to pay attention to,
Mhm.
but they're literally going and mobilizing and organizing to vote people out who simply just voted for the impeachment.
Right.
And it's like they
Right.
are so well informed, and
Yeah.
they're able to target, whether it's through Facebook or their dumb podcasts or whatever it is, they're able to mobilize and target their base,
Yeah,
like
the things that they want
so much
specifically.
better than Democrats. And
Yeah.
it sucks. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
it sucks
I-
to lose.
What's interesting, I want to move to just one piece that came out in the Times this week. We've been talking about, obviously corporate Democrats, centrist Democrats like Sinema, like Manchin, and no matter where you stand, it seems in the Democratic Party, there's a consensus that there is no messaging, that they've lost the thread, and that it's not going well. This is obviously Bernie Sanders saying we're not going to win elections in 2022 unless our base is energized and ordinary people understand what we're fighting for and how we're different than Republicans. That's not the case. He said, I think many Americans, millions of Americans, have become demoralized, and they're asking, what do Democrats stand for? Clearly, the current strategy is failing, and we need a major course correct. Now, it's not just Bernie Sanders. Tim Ryan of Ohio is basically, he's saying, look, the Biden administration is not able to pass its domestic agenda, but also there's a lack of clear public health guidance around masking and testing, which we're going to get into later in the show. He said the Democrats can't get out of their own way. The Democrats have got to do a better job of being clear on what they're trying to do. And this is in a week where child tax credits expanded thanks to Democrats. Huge win under the American Families Plan as soon as Biden came into office, and we were all like, holy shit. I know Brandy and I agree, parents are fucking trifling, but they've been with money now. Like, imagine when parents don't get that money anymore. Like, it's such an easy win. And so this is Tim Ryan again. He was like, he said about about the child tax credits running out. He said it's about as straightforward as it gets. If Democrats can't get on with a tax cut for working families, what are we for?
That's why we have to kick them out of the party.
But the Democrats are for all that. It's Joe Manchin and
Yeah.
Kirsten Sinema. And this is one of the things that drives me crazy. Joe Biden is the one who put those bills in front of people.
Right.
He has said exactly what he wants. Kamala Harris has said what she wants. Every Democrat votes for it except for Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So I'm not down with this whole thing of Democrats.
That we hate them. So
But at the same
it's not
time,
yelling at
there are, I agree with you, Julie, but I do think that there are other Democrats who are, Kirsten Sinema and Manchin are running cover for them. Other sort of corporate friendly Democrats who do not want to see things that are in the Build Back Better plan passed, maybe who also get fossil fuel money, but they're kind of on the hush hush,
Who are we talking about?
Yeah.
The other one from Arizona, that other guy, he's kind of like that too.
Isn't he Republican?
No, he's Democrat. Remember the guy he's a pilot or something?
The astronaut?
Yeah, him. He's supposedly, the word is that
all
he's an
astronauts
undercover.
are reliant on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
We know that.
He's an undercover,
Did they vote no against?
These people, they say that there's a handful of them. They say they'll vote if they have all the votes. But if they don't have all the votes, then they're like,
why don't they have all the votes?
Yeah.
Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. So
True.
ultimately,
Yes. No,
I understand what you're saying. I do. And I do. And I've constantly am frustrated with Democrats and the fucking let's work together, just all of it. But it comes down, but there is a thing though, where what we are doing and what the media and some of us at times get sucked into is taking down and this idea that if Biden needs to do a better job, but what would you have him do? Not you, let's say, but what are we talking about? It's easy to criticize without constantly pointing and specifically going for me, it's Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. I know that if they voted yes on XYZ, every single thing that we want would be passing through. So without them, what are we talking about?
I think that it's now in Biden's court, and I want to bring in my next guest because I think he'll have some ideas about specifically when it comes to the pandemic and given the roadblocks put up by SCOTUS, what can someone with presidential executive powers do right now to ensure our safety? This is The Sitch. And joining me, he is a writer and a public health researcher at Brown University. Please welcome Abdullah Shihipar. Abdullah.
Hey,
you
how are you
doing?
doing? I'm good. How are you?
We're chilling. It's like whatever. I wanted to bring you into this discussion because I think that Julie raises a good point about sort of, the hard place that Biden's own party has put him in, to say nothing of the far right. But you have been writing about public health. You're a public health researcher. We need your expertise and brains, and especially when this week, a story that we didn't talk about, but SCOTUS blocking any kind of testing or vaccine mandates for workers, affecting like 84 million American workers, saying OSHA has no jurisdiction, that this is not an occupational hazard. Utterly ridiculous. You got Neil Gorsuch, who doesn't even wear a fucking mask. Two of the lawyers who argued this case, before I kick it to you, Abdullah, remind everyone, they had COVID. They were arguing that it's not an occupational hazard, and yet they were home with COVID themselves. I mean, this is the bonkers house of mirrors we live in. But what's your reaction to just that, this SCOTUS's action this week?
So obviously it's disappointing. Obviously the vaccine and testing mandate was important. But while I am disappointed, I'm not despairing at all because, well, I mean, it is disappointing and it is despairing. However, there is what the Supreme Court did not close the door to, and there was a good op-ed in the New York Times by David Michaels and Jordan Brar, who headed OSHA in the Obama administration. And in the Supreme Court's own, the majority opinion, what they said was that you could issue a risk-based standard for cramped and crowded environments where COVID would be an occupational risk. And so what we have demanded, the vaccine and testing mandate has kind of been the bar, basically the floor, right? Mm-hmm. What we have wanted is have wanted an emergency temporary standard that would cover all workers, and crowded and cramped environments is most workers. Sure. That would cover all workers and address things that, like ventilation, address things like how many people can be in the building, address things like, masking, etc. How do you reduce how do you make these physical environments safer for workers? Because the vaccine and testing mandate is good, but ultimately it does put the emphasis more on the employee than it does to comply with these mandates than it does the employer. That's not to say that they're not necessary, but it's to say that there is a way forward, and I would like to see the Biden administration come back and put out a new emergency temporary standard that covers all workers, that addresses these more holistic parts that are just beyond just like vaccines and
emergency temporary standards that they would have to comply by given the pandemic.
Yes, and I should add that, the emergency temporary standard for healthcare workers, that expired. That was in place and that expired, and so that is no longer in place for even healthcare workers who, have this occupational risk of being surrounded by the virus all day. And
the Supreme Court did say that was okay. It was okay to vaccine and test, or vaccine mandate and test healthcare workers. It was the one thing that we can thank, Keg Stan Kavanaugh for, I guess. Beyond that, beyond the emergency standards, what else could the Biden administration do? What you wrote a whole piece about how we are still approaching the pandemic on an individual level and sort of shaming individuals to get vaccinated, which I'm on board for, but there is so much more on a federal level that can be done. Biden's even said this is not a federal thing. There's no federal solution. He literally said those words. Yeah. What's your response to something like that?
So I think what I always like to preface the conversation is there is medicine and then there's public health, right? Medicine is you treat the individual, you take a drug, whatever, you're only talking about your own personal health. Then there's public health, which is like a population level metric, right? You have to, and in that sense, you literally cannot individualize yourself out of a pandemic. You can't treat it like one by one by one by one. And I mean that both in the in our sense, where we have a country of partially vaccinated people, but also globally, right? You can have a high vaccinated country, and you can have countries that aren't vaccinated, and it doesn't really matter. And so, I mean, not that it doesn't matter, the pandemic doesn't end. So essentially what you have to do is you have to control the spread of the disease, whatever way that is. So there's vaccines, but then there's obviously, masking, there's a lot of testing involved. There's ventilation. Ventilation is really important, like upgrading the air cleaning the air that we live in. And of course there's distancing and all the like. So until I think predominantly how we talk about in the last couple of months, how we talk about the pandemic is it saves you from going to the hospital, or it saves you from dying. So in a very individual term.
vaccine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the problem with that is, like, if you're in a high vaccinated area and you're a vulnerable person, so let's say you're an under 5 child, or let's say you are who have lower risk, but we'll get into that, somewhat lower risk. We'll get into that in a second.
My dad has 0 antibodies because he went through
Right.
chemo earlier in the pandemic. So
Yeah,
he's like,
immunocompromised people.
Yeah.
People who are who have a disability, or who are, like you said, like your dad, who went through certain treatments. And so when you're in an environment of high spread, which unfortunately due to Omicron, I don't know how to pronounce it, due to the new variant, is much of the country, these people then are now put at risk, right? And that's where vaccination kind of helped, is that you had lots of people kind of, the collective protection that is offered by vaccines reduces the spread and then protects these vulnerable people. And so when we talk about, for example, under 5 children, right? People are like, oh, well, kids aren't high risk. But, if you take a fraction, right? If you take a fraction and you increase the number on the bottom, right? And the more you increase, let's say you have like 20%, right? I don't know, let's say the number is 10%. It's not that high, but let's say you have a 10% number, and you increase the number at the bottom, the number at the top also goes up. So that's why you're seeing a lot of children ending up in the hospital, because a lot of children are getting infected. The amount of percentage of children who, will have severe outcomes is very low. But because you have uncontrolled spread, you end up having these issues with the hospital. So that's just the reason why you can't individualize yourself in a pandemic. What we would want from the Biden administration, and there's complete consensus in the field of public health in terms of people I talk to, in terms of the rank and file, is just an acknowledgement that the pandemic is going on beyond, like, get vaccinated, get boosters. There has been a complete resistance to go back to that sort of collective level, just talking about messaging even. We can get into all the stuff they can do, but there's a palpable amount of anger that the administration is not taking the pandemic seriously.
Even from his own ranks, I just want to say this week, I believe, people who were his former health advisors actually spoke out and said, look, we need to treat the pandemic as something that's here to stay. And what are we going to do with that knowledge? That's something that we cannot completely eradicate. That doesn't mean to say, you're going to get sick, whatever, blah. And it definitely doesn't mean, go back to work after 5 days. It means, like, what are the other mitigating factors? What are the other things we can do to help people, knowing how rapid the spread is, knowing how this will and could continue. Sad to say, it sucks. I wish there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't deserve it, do we? We don't really deserve it as Americans. I do want to say, though, Biden has said he's doubling the COVID-19 testing kits. They're apparently going to be online and available in like 3 days. We'll see. That N95 masks are going to be distributed to the public. He's deploying 1,000 military medics to hospitals around the country. What about the National Defense Production Act? How does public health work into that?
So those are important components, right? The National Defense Production Act should be used to improve up the production of masks and tests and all the like. But what we're missing like a coordinated strategy here from the federal government in terms of piecing these things all together. These things all happen in reaction, right? Oh, we need to send, people are like, we need masks, we need to send free. So they're like, okay, we'll send free masks. But well, we're only going to send a couple masks. And then, oh, free tests, we're going to send you 4 tests, right? And so which 4 tests per household is like, that's not that much. And so,
by the way, not to brag, we did go to a super spreader and we sent away for the test and we only got one, and we got it a million years after we probably already were over having COVID. So it doesn't even really pan out that well, even when they do promise it.
You said you went to a super spreader, like it was like no big deal. It was like a VIP event. Like you went to a super spreader.
It was VIP super spreader.
It was. And then we couldn't get a test and everyone else had it.
Somehow.
And then we couldn't get our hands on a test, and we did the thing where they said they'd send it to you, and they said we thought we would get at least two,
but we got one, and it came.
So then I was like, just throw it away. Just kidding. We have to, but we haven't taken it now. We don't know. We're gonna.
I peed on it, and I'm pregnant.
Right. So it's like 4 tests are still not even enough.
Yeah, and it's all in reaction, right? It feels like it feels like the Biden administration is chasing a past that is not there anymore. And they're chasing the sort of summer period in which, vaccines were more protective, but we still had a bunch of people dying. And so what I would like to see is a complete acknowledgement and a reset almost, right? That we have to almost we have to live with the pandemic, as people are saying, or live with the virus, as people are saying. And what does that mean? How do we give people the tools to protect themselves? How do we give people the tools to people who have to work in person? What should they do to protect themselves at work? How can we assist them, issuing that temporary standard guidance? And public health in America is underfunded and it's near collapse because we don't have the amount of people, the departments right now, because of the spread is so high, there's only so much they can do, and there's only so much they can do and say, and they feel undercut by an administration that doesn't really know its own messaging around the pandemic. And one thing that I would like to see real quickly is just go back to what you promised in your campaign plan at the start. The president promised 100,000 public health workers, which we would love, right? We would love. Which we would need to really get these things out to people and reach every person in the country, or as many people in the country as possible. That's one start. There's just really not an acknowledgement that this is a gargantuan, traumatic event on the level of the Great Depression, the Civil War. It's just let's just get this over with and go through. So that's lack of strategy. And so there's so many things the Biden administration should do. Let's start with an acknowledgement that what we're doing right now isn't.
Yeah, rather than we have to get back to normal. Let's keep society running, as Dr. Fauci has been saying, which is really actually depressing as shit, to be honest with you. Yeah. But what, in terms of public health and preparedness, you're saying, mobilize, you should have mobilized a year ago when you said it, training programs or whatnot to get those 100,000 public healthcare workers go. But what are the barriers to that, right? Just paint a picture of the future coming out of this. Are we at the behest of the private insurance industry? Is that what's holding us back? Is it big pharma that's holding us back? Or is it just the sheer reliance on those two entities from the federal government and from politicians rather than an investment in something like public health?
So there's a number of things. So the guy who's running the COVID-19 task force is Jeffrey Zients. He's a mega businessman. I've heard it described as he's if you were to get Stephen Miller to run immigration policy, essentially, it's very pro-business, very less let it open sort of thing. It's not for a public health response, you would want a public health professional or someone, at least a doctor, who technically isn't public health, but you would want someone with public health experience, at least leading it, right? But we have a businessman who is leading it. And so business has consistently directed the pandemic response. Prior to the CDC issuing the 5-day, messy guidance about isolation, Delta Airlines had sent a letter to the CDC being these isolation guidelines are really kicking our ass. Can you just change them? And then a few weeks later, lo and behold, they changed them, which according to some people that even blindsided people within the agency itself.
Oh shit!
So there is a huge reliance on corporate influence. Corporate America is kind of driving.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I would say is that there's corporate America that's driving this response, and then another problem is like there's a lot. I'd say like there's just like a lack of. The country is divided into three components essentially. There are people who are still taking this seriously. There are people who are not taking this seriously, and there are people who are in the middle. And I'd say the people in the middle are kind of like the majority. Who could go either way, essentially, based on what the
Tuesdays I'm scared, Thursdays it's whatevs.
Based on what the prevailing attitude is, and so there is a lack of, I guess like it's been so long, and there's like a lack of cohesive pressure and stuff, and the lack of thing that kind of allows those in power to kind of take advantage and be like, well, let's hope this is the last surge and get through it, and then we won't have to prepare. But of course, more variants, could.
That's been the saddest thing to me, is to see this administration go like, well, who could have predicted a variant? And we were like, everyone, we could have predicted a variant, and we don't have the access to the intelligence that you guys do and the information and the experts. I want to give Julie and Brandy a chance to jump in. Any questions, burning hot concerns, thoughts?
I mean, if you were Biden right now, Abdullah, what would you do?
What would I do? Is I would, first of all, I would say, we're in a pandemic. I would say, and I would like, the thing is,
I do hear him say that.
Well, no, I'm going to push back on that a little, because when during Christmas, for instance, when we really shouldn't have, when we knew about the spread of Omicron or whatever, he said it's safe for you to gather with your family members, without necessarily adding that the risk of hospitalization and death is lower, and that's how I'm defining safe, right? They want to have it both ways, where they're like, oh, wear a mask, get tested, get boosted, Google where you get the test, get the thing, but also we can run society as normal, which clearly we can't. We're seeing closures, whether we want to see those things or not. And so that would be the first step, is to have a consistent message that the pandemic is still going on, that the pandemic is still going on, that we really need to scale back our behavior, and put measures in place that you can put in place that are consistent with this, right? Show that you are more. You're trying to do more than like a vaccine only strategy,
right?
You're like,
if you put all your eggs in that basket in the vaccine, there's fucking breakthrough cases. Well, then you're done. Like, it's done.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to continue to defend. I mean, obviously, we're going to defend the vaccine, but you need a broader strategy than that.
Yeah, and I think what are your federal agencies doing that, like, people? One thing that frustrates me. I mean, I'm back and forth between Rhode Island and Texas, which both have, Rhode Island is blue, Texas is red, but both state governments, Texas is doing a much worse job. But the Rhode Island state government, because there is not necessarily that much pressure from the administration, no state in New England has a proper mask mandate, right? We have California does. Oregon does, Washington does. So what I constantly hear is like, oh, because some states won't do it, because some people won't do it, like, let's just, you can't do anything at all, right? And I would like to see an effort from the administration, a real genuine effort from the administration that, that acknowledges this sort of vaccine plus strategy, that we need a number of tools and a number of public health interventions. Yeah. And one thing that I always like to point out to people is, like, Democrats really get voting barriers, right? They get the fact that a lot of people don't have ID, that you need to go door to door to organize, to get people to vote, to get everyone, to get as many people as possible out to vote. We get that when it comes to voting. When it comes to vaccines, that was tried for like 2 months. And then it was like, oh, okay, go get it in a pharmacy, go get it in a thing. That's not to say that there's not significant anti-vax sentiment, right? But there has been a lack of
anti-vax sentiment.
Sorry? But
he agreed.
Yeah.
But there are barriers. You're saying there's barriers actually getting
There's not to say that there's not. It's not to say there's not significant anti-vax sentiment. So of course there is, but also there hasn't been like a firm enough pushback from the from the Biden administration to promote these vaccines, to get them out to the people. And what I always find that frustrates me in public health is there's this almost barrier that stops people from even trying. It's like, why try if they're going to resist anyway? And that, for me, whether you're talking about public health or you're talking about voting rights or something, it's a consistent theme of why try, because this other side is more organized. They're going to resist anyway. So if you have that attitude, you've lost the battle before it can even begin. That's what I would like to see. As a Muslim, I always go back to what I call the Muslim band standard, or the Muslim band thing. Have I seen the Biden administration push for anything as hard as the Trump administration pushed for that ban? I can't say that I have. And so, because
they had their Stephen Miller in there. I mean,
yeah, like the Trump administration, as disjointed and as incompetent as they were for their own agenda, it was just like, we'll try this, we'll try this, we'll try this, we'll try this, we'll hit this,
so much passion
until it sticks. With the Biden administration, it's like, okay, we'll do this one thing. Oh, we can't, we put our hands up and stuff. And that's what I think what really frustrates me is we don't, in public health and specifically, we haven't seen that attempt. And in fact, we've seen undercutting of our own messaging and our own attempts.
Yeah. I would agree.
I think for me, I'm sure 100 million, 1,000% right about everything you're saying. I think for people, there became a disinterest in what any public health officials, including Dr. Fauci, had to say, because I can speak for myself, and I'm sure lots of people who didn't even get the vaccine, even though we did, because it felt lied to about the vaccine, because the vaccine didn't do what they said the vaccine was going to do. I mean, everybody at our super spreader event was all vaccinated. We had to do proof of vaccination. We all got tested before we went in, and then everybody still got it. So it's like, well, I think it becomes just a lack of trust in the public and public health officials and the word of what they're saying. It's just nobody believes. Nobody knows who to believe.
And rather than maybe, and is it possible? And shouldn't it be a public health thing for our elected officials to be like, you know what, we actually don't know. So we don't know. So we think this, and we heard a little bit. That's why we're wearing masks. That's why we got the vaccine. That's why. But you just don't know.
Yeah. And if I can, so basically, to provide some perspective, there is the public health rank and file, right? Who are people who are working in health departments, people who are working in universities and stuff. And then there are public health officials who are at the behest of the administration. The CDC is technically an independent organization, but they get pressure from the White House to go a certain direction, and just like we saw with the sort of Delta Airlines guidance. What really made us, the turning point that I can see in this whole pandemic was in May, when the CDC said, you can take your masks off if you're vaccinated.
Yes.
That was not, we were not at that point. We were not at a point in the country where we could where we had reached that threshold. And even honestly past that, like I am originally from Toronto, like a long time ago. I used to live there, and my friends in Ontario, until the new wave hit, they had like a couple months of semi-normalcy because everyone was like still wearing a mask and stuff, but life or otherwise returned to normal for a couple months. And so that was what I think was the first sort of turning point was in May, when they said, okay, you can take off your mask. And then the CDC guidance, was like, okay, well, now with cases are going up, so put your mask back on. Oh, like with the isolation guidance, right? You can't do this, you can't do that. I have always advocated for is being clear and responsible, clear to people about what this actually is. The pandemic is unfair. It sucks. Like it's not a rational actor, whether you're left or right, whatever you believe. We can't escape it unless we actually do something about it, right? We can, as we can see, right? It's clearly having an impact on our lives, whether someone chooses to ignore it or whether someone doesn't choose to ignore it. Like we're all miserable about it. So, and it's a thing we can't necessarily. It's a virus, right? It's not like I think some people have the attitude. It's like, oh, like this is so unfair. Like as if a politician can kind of wave COVID away, which we can't. Like we can have better strategies to manage it, which I'm asking for. But it's a virus. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to require patience, and it's going to suck. But if we don't, engage in, if we don't, be patient and try these things. It'll only we're just kicking the ball down the road.
Yeah. And I think and I totally echo what Julie's saying, that like, having some sort of humility about how uncertain these times are and how scary it is, I think is really nice. And I would love for Biden to have a cavalier notion in nature about voting rights and about the Build Back Better Act and about the filibuster reform, and then have sort of, more caution and thoughtfulness and, reverence when it comes to the pandemic. Instead, we're switched on that. He's like hella cavalier about the pandemic and, really, really cautious about, well, I don't know, Cinema, what's she going to think? She's tough as a devil, or whatever the hell he said about her. So yeah, we're just missing the mark. And thank you so much for breaking that down, Abdullah. We have to move on. We gotta wrap this show up. It's been so good. I love everyone's comments. I see them. I'll read some in a little bit. But final segment. Given that Mr. Thomas Friedman, man with the worst takes in the country, maybe the world, still releasing op-eds for the New York Times, still just getting that cushy op-ed money, whatever that is, selling his weird Orientalist books. He had a new thought. He had a new thought this week, which was, hey, Liz Cheney seems to be doing some good. Why not have Biden and Liz Cheney run on a ticket together in 2024 and be elected by no one? That is exactly what would happen. So I want to know from my guess, what is the worst 2024 presidential picks you could possibly imagine? The worst ticket. Worst ticket 2024. Who wants to go first? Julie?
Cinema.
I knew you were going to say
Mansion
that.
Cinema. Cinema.
Cinema has talked about, right, these are the whispers, right? That she thinks she's going to be a presidential hopeful.
Yes. I believe she believes that she can be president. And I believe that she believes that she's going to be running for president. And not vice president, but president. And she probably thinks she's going to be vice president and president, because that's how big of a stupid bitch she is.
She very much, here's what I think. I think she'll try to get in a primary, maybe the Democratic primary, and then when she doesn't win that, she'll run third party. And we'll have to listen to her stupid voice on a debate stage.
Oh my God. Third party. I can't take it. I can't take it.
Brandy,
I'm going to go with Julie's, because I knew she was going to say that.
Worst.
We're pretty much the same. Yeah.
But they appeal to the center. You guys, there's so many people who are just tired of the division.
Yeah, we really need to get into the division, because people are people, and for the most part, we're really good people, and America's filled with good people, and all these good people just want to keep things white and keep things good.
Keep things white.
So
good.
Let's keep it man and white. It's cool. Just men and white. That's your ticket. Men and white. That's the ticket.
That definitely would win. All right, Abdullah. What's your worst 2024 pick?
I go Buttigieg. One of those.
Wait, say that again. I think we lost you a little bit.
I'm gonna say the worst ticket that I can think of is cinema to get the centrist, and then someone from the Biden administration. So Pete Buttigieg or something.
I hate that too.
Think about the dance that they would create for that candidacy. Just gotta have high hopes.
Yes.
Yeah. With the Macarena.
And she'd be like, we're both LGBTQ. IA.
Yeah.
No, I really, first of all, don't think it was lost on me that you guys were definitely calling her a fake bisexual. She's probably one of the most famous people. What kind of before people were I'm bi for clout, she was totally bi for clout.
Yeah.
She totally said that.
Come on. on. And
I
please,
love that. Buttigieg. Oh,
That was great. That was good. He
that's a
thought
good
about
one.
it well. I
That
like
is
it.
cold-hearted. That's
Mine-
cold-hearted.
Mine's
Let's
more of a
go.
throwback because Thomas Friedman's is a throwback. I think Bush Cheney 2024, baby. Like,
Whoa.
go back to it. The
Wow.
worst possible ticket. George
Yeah.
W. Bush being resuscitated by a lot of idiot pundits somehow.
Wow.
And Dick Cheney, who does not have a heart, but my God, he's still got a bloodlust. So it is.
Wow.
I think Bush would be constitutionally limited though, wouldn't he? Because you got 2 terms.
Well, what if you reverse it? Can he run for vice
Yeah,
president?
vice president. People
Oh,
said that
true.
about Obama, like
Do
be
that.
Biden's VP.
So Cheney.
Wow.
I would hate to see Hillary Clinton run again. And they mentioned that on
Good
The
one.
View.
Good
After
one.
The View has jumped the shark, they were like,
Good
what about
one.
Hillary? And I'm like, no.
Maybe it's, what about Bill
I
and
think-
Hillary
Ooh, what about-
together on a ticket?
I hate that.
One of
Disgusting.
the potential things that's been thrown out is pretty scary. It's like they've thrown out Harris and Buttigieg, who have both, had missteps in terms of how they communicate with people and can't seriously seem to connect with people.
With like as in their staff?
Yeah,
like
that's just been thrown out that like, oh, they're looking at
Harris
and
Buttigieg. No.
No.
And that would what the Harris obviously is like president. Can you imagine Buttigieg? They lift up Buttigieg. They would totally fucking do that. Nah, I don't have confidence in either of those people. I apologize. I don't think that. I think that the ticket was rough the last time, and other than Bernie, honestly, Warren had her moments, except for when she went full Daenerys on us. Not gonna relitigate that, but you know.
Oh shit.
Oh shit! Shots
Shit.
fired.
That's for
No.
another time, girl.
But I think Warren's gonna try to run again for sure. For sure.
You
for sure.
do?
Yeah,
I
oh
don't
yeah.
know.
Well, we were at her super spreader event before
Yes,
she
we were.
on Super Tuesday.
We were.
It was
We
like
were
right
there.
when COVID was out, and it's like, well, let's go get this thing because we love Elizabeth Warren, and then
Let's
she dropped out that night, and we were crying.
Yeah, I mean, I like Elizabeth Warren. We like Bernie fine.
No,
I like
I
Kamala
just-
Harris. I love Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
so
we both love
I don't
Kamala
know that I don't have confidence necessarily that she could win, and certainly don't drag the gay guy behind you. You're gonna screw
No.
yourself even more.
I've been
But-
very disappointed in Kamala Harris, but I also think it's a thankless vice presidential role. I think it's difficult, but I don't think they're giving her even like the ability to stand out. If she wanted to, she's got to hold Biden accountable. She's got to be at fucking like, she needs to be pushing him. But I don't know if she has even that in her. I think she is more of a moderate, to be honest with you. I don't know. I'm not
know
totally
either.
convinced.
I do
Okay.
think they have her backstage, like giving her the book of secrets and stuff, being like, "You're gonna be president. We need to keep you back here. Here's
Aliens
what's
are
going
real.
on.
Yeah,
Aliens
be
are
quiet.
real.
And they are.
Talk to Harry Reid. There's a lot. The UFOs, Russia, Putin's backdoor code is this. We got to get this going. We're gonna keep you safe. Don't say too much, but in the going into the 4th year, you're gonna come out cunt. Okay, you're gonna come out cunt."
One
Fuck
thing
Julie. Julie, that would mean the Democrats have a plan, and I hope that is the case. Abdullah, have the last word here.
Just one thing that I want to say, like this discussion reminded me of, and I forgot to mention. It's like, just stop talking down to people. Like, stop getting Jen Psaki to punch people in the face and Kamala Harris to tell people, well, you have Google, whatever. I think for us, just that would make a difference in terms of the pandemic as well. Just stop talking down to people.
I would agree
yeah.
with
She is the last word.
Yeah.
that. Julie can have the last word.
Yeah.
No,
No.
I don't have the last word.
No,
All
no,
right,
no.
we gotta wrap, but there is more show with Julie, Brandy, and myself. We're talking about marijuana and COVID. Obviously, Abdullah, if you want to join, you are more than welcome. That's patreon.com/Bitchuation room. But Abdullah, where can people find your work?
They can find my work on my Twitter at Shihipar, just Shihipar. You can find my work there.
Sweet.
You'll find everything there.
At Shihipar. Thank you so much for joining us. Be very well. Take good care. Come back.
Yeah, for sure. I had a good time. Yes.
Hell yeah, us too. And Julie and Brandy, where can people find you guys?
In the gutter.
Our
Lay it out.
our podcast is called Dumb Gay Politics. It's everywhere you get most places you get your podcast. We were having technical difficulties, but
Yeah.
all of the major Spotify, iTunes, all that jazz.
Yes.
We do have a Patreon that's non-political. If you like to get down on just We do like whippets and talk about, we do eating challenges. We just do every
Will you
weird
have me on
thing.
to talk about it just like that? Because that's like the one thing I want to talk about.
God.
I also
And
want to do
just-
whippets.
Yeah. And that's the only way you can watch that show.
Hell yeah. All right. We'll see you in the post show. Thank you so much for being here and for for everything. Just for being you and amazing. Take good care. And thank you guys for being in the chat. And thanks for joining me. I'm just gonna go to some super chats. Thank you so much, Tony Rizzo, writing in about Tiffany Caban, who's going to be on the live show on March 10th. Tiffany Caban is great. I attended a virtual workshop that she led with Working Families Party. Very informative and useful practice in harm reduction, local DA elections. I wish I could make the live show. Well, you can join virtually. Virtual tickets are available, but that's like in the weeds shit, Tony. That's like what you have to do. It's like, yeah, praxis on harm reduction in local DA elections. It's not always sexy. It's hard work. On Youngkin, Constrained Agency on Twitch says he has single-handedly forced all of Virginia students to have a year worth of remedial education at any public universities outside of Virginia. I mean, I know there's going to be pushback here. We'll see. It's going to be kind of a showdown between families and schools and whatnot. Gary Cooper on YouTube on Cinema says, Cinema on Dancing with the Stars, that's going to happen. I bet my life on it. I think you're absolutely right. Are you kidding me? Of course. Like, and good. Like, I will celebrate her. I just want to safely be able to celebrate like whatever midlife crisis, extended midlife crisis she's going through. I'm like, yes, girl, you know, just out of power, please. This is Pow Nobody Now on Twitch says COVID was a dry run on how we as a country would react to a virus spreading, and we failed as a country. When a real deadly virus comes along, like airborne Ebola, we're fucked. Totally. I think about that often. Like, it's been awful. We're bumping up against whatever 800,000+ deaths. I've had family members die, friends, but like, if an insanely deadly virus, not just contagious, but deadly, what the fuck are we gonna do? We're totally unprepared for it. Jeremy Justice, thank you for your super chat. Rogan Mar 2024 would be the worst ticket and somehow most electable. Oh, not electable. I mean, just very specific demographic. Like, they pulled well with non-college educated and college educated and overeducated white men. But that's a really good one. And for everybody, thank you guys so much for all of your thoughtful comments and your super chats, and obviously for becoming patrons. I see you, new patrons. And if you give $10, and if you are the $10 tier as a patron, you get a shout out in the ceremonial fart song. We have no new patrons at $10 or more. Up your pledge. Oh my God. All of the benefits. But thank you to the big tippers, Abdullah K, Joseph L, who said MLK would be proud of me. Thank you. That's really sweet. MLK would definitely be like, you are not doing enough. Francesca, the fart song is dumb. Randy L, thank you so much. Thanks for all the work you do is what you write. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you to all the Twitch subs, Hippie Spot and Nanny Mendoza 05. I'm sure we'll have more Twitch subs next week. Thank you for the super chats again, Tony Rizzo and Jeremy Justice, and for everyone who supports the show. Thank you to Paige Oamek, to Maximillien, Inhoff, and to Alexandra Ornes, who help me with the show. We stream every Sunday, 5/8 Eastern on YouTube and Twitch. Follow the Bitchuation Room on Twitter at BitchuationPod, on TikTok at Franny Fio, on Instagram at Franny Fio. And remember, y'all, fight the power, fuck the patriarchy, get tickets for March, and don't just bitch about it, be about it. Bye-bye. Hey, I'm still here. We got to end the break.